Welcome to another tutorial video from Maths. Make sure and subscribe for more. In this video, we're going to look at standard deviation. Standard deviation is associated with the statistics chapter in our maths course and around the area of the mean. So our mean, as we know, is when you get the average of the values or the typical value, the middle value. Whereas the standard deviation is going a little bit further. It gives us an indication of how spread out all of the values are from the mean. So in other words, if you have a very small standard deviation, it means all of your values are very close together. Whereas if you have a large standard deviation, all of the data is extremely spread out. So before we get to an example, we'll do an example now in about 2 minutes, but I just want to give you a background as to how you're finding the standard deviation through a couple of images. So very basic, I have 5 numbers. These numbers are representing the heights of these 5 dogs. The red arrows are just indicating the height of the dog to shoulder level. What I'm doing then in the second image there, that green line is representing the mean height. So I've added up the 5 numbers and divided by 5 to get the mean height of the dog. So you can see here that some of the dogs are above the mean, some of them are below the mean. In this picture now, I've just removed the image of the dog, and what I've done is I've taken the mean away from the original height of the dog. So I'm basically subtracting the height of the dog from the mean, and you can see here one of my values I'm getting approximately 206 millimeters. So that's all I'm doing, and that's what we'll need to do in our formula now in a couple of minutes. We subtract the mean from the original height. You can see there that some of them are going to be negative, some are going to be positive. So the values that are smaller than the mean are going to give me a negative solution, and vice versa for those greater than the mean. And your final step, as you'll see when we carry out our formula now in a minute, you'll get a standard deviation for this particular example of 147 millimeters. So the standard deviation for this height of dogs is 147 millimeters. So that's the spread of the data from the green line, which is our mean. Now we look at the empirical rule, which looks as 1 standard deviation, 2 standard deviations, and 3 standard deviations. We have a separate video which looks at the empirical rule. So here's our example. Find the standard deviation of these 5 numbers. These 5 numbers are representing the heights of our 5 dogs. In our formula, we have a lot of new symbols here. This little symbol here is our symbol for standard deviation. It's sigma. You've probably come across that quite a lot. So that's the symbol for standard deviation. You can see then we have our square root symbol and this little e, which is representing the sum, or to add, basically. And it's getting you to add inside of the bracket, which is written as x minus mu. X is the variable, in other words, the height of the dog, whereas the mean is represented by that u symbol, which is pronounced mu. So like we said in our video earlier, we're taking the mean away from the height of the dog, or the mean away from the variable. We then square that value, and then we divide our answer by the number of numbers, or 5 dogs, and then we get the square root of that. So there's quite a bit of work involved in this, and sometimes drawing it as a table can help you here. There are ways of doing it on your calculator, which we can look at in another video, but here we're going to do it the long way. We're going to do it out using our formula from page 33 in our log tables, and I'm going to do it in a table format. So first thing I need to do is go off and find the mean. So to find the mean, we have to add up all of the numbers and divide by how many numbers you have. So it's 600 plus 470 plus 170 plus 430 plus my 300. And I divide my total by the number of numbers, which is 5. That's giving me 1970 all over 5, which is giving me a mean of 394 millimeters. So that's the average height of the dogs. Now I'm going to look at my formula here. How do I find my standard deviation? So I'm going to focus in on this part here. See the bit where it says x minus mu, which is the variable minus the mean. So I'm going to do this in a table format, and I'm going to do each one separately. So the first one I'm going to do there is my x, which is my variable. My first variable is 600, and I'm subtracting my mean, which is 394. I'm then coming to my 470. I go 470, subtract my mean, 394. I come to my third height, which is 170, minus my 394, which is my mean, and then I take the 430, subtract the 394. And then my final dog height is 300, subtract the mean of 394. Let's work these out. So I'm getting, for my first one, I'm getting positive 206. For 470 take 394, I'm getting 76. For 170 take away my mean, I'm getting a negative 224. For 430 take away my mean, I'm getting 36. And for 300 take away my mean, I'm getting negative 96. So how does that look now? That's when I'm taking my x minus my mu, or my variable subtract my mean. The next thing now, what we want to do is the next part of my formula, which is to square that value. Look what I'm doing here in my formula. I've done the bit inside the bracket. I now need to do the squared part. So let's put that in. So I'm doing x minus my mu, and now I'm putting it in red because all I want to do now is square my value. Okay, so go and square your values. So they're very large values coming back here. So I'm getting, for my first one, 206 multiplied by 206 is 42436, so 42,436. 76 squared is getting me 5,776. Minus 224 squared, so minus by minus gives me a positive. Just make sure that goes in a bracket if you're using a Casio calculator at home. So it's 50,176. 36 squared is 1,296, and minus 96 by minus 96 giving me a positive 9,216. Okay, so that's the squared part. I'm over here now with my formula in yellow. Next thing I need to do is the sum. I need to add those values together. So I'm just going to draw a line underneath here and add them together. I'm just going to put my symbol there for add and add them together. So what do we get? I'm getting 108,000. So extremely large numbers here, 108,900. So that's when I add all of those together. Now coming back over to my formula, what's the next step in my formula? It's getting me to divide them by n, the number of numbers. So I've added them together. Now I need to divide them by n. So I'm taking my 108,900 divided by n, which is the number of numbers, which is 5 numbers. And when I divide that by 5, I'm getting 21,780. The next part of my formula wants me to do the square root. So I'm going to get the square root of all of that. So this is in a square root. And the square root of 21,780 is throwing me back a standard deviation equals to 147.5. And I just want to bring you back here to the image of the dogs. So once again, you can see the green line represents the mean, and then you can see here that we have now marked in our standard deviation, which is up or down that 147 millimeters. That's what we've just found. So I'm just going to put up another question here now for you to try out, and it's asking you just to practice what we've just done here now on finding the standard deviation. So here's the question to practice. Show that the following sets of numbers have the same standard deviation. So using your log tables, page 30, the formula there for finding the standard deviation. Like I said, if you want to find the standard deviation from your calculator, just check out the separate video. Thank you for watching another tutorial video from Untitled Maths. Make sure and subscribe.